I'm very, very glad to be here and to be reading this evening and to be thanking Wyatt and Barbara and Megan and Adam and all of the staff and all of the old friends I have met again here and new friends I've made and the community, which is so nourishing. I thank you for that. Now, I see that I cannot see the clock, so let me just... I was hoping somebody would say that. I've got about a 3-hour reading schedule here. I thought I would read from several different projects, and I'm starting with a recent project which began with a completely accidental, serendipitous meeting with a painter named Holly Trussell Brigham, who is a watercolorist. We met when I spent a day at her daughter's elementary school, and Holly was the parent who took me around school all day. And we had lunch together. And over lunch, I asked her what she did. And she explained she does watercolors, and her project, her life project, is to paint herself as famous women in history. And she had a couple of postcards of a couple of her paintings, which were very impressive. And she was at that point just starting a new project about nuns who were artists. And she was working on a painting of Hildegard of Bingen. And I had, years earlier, had a research grant to do research about Hildegard. I had gone to Germany and been at every place Hildegard had ever been. And I like nuns. So I said, you want to collaborate on something? And we did a series of 8 portraits of mostly famous nuns. They're not all famous, but they're all wonderful. And I thought I would read maybe 4 or 5 of these. The first one is the Hildegard poem, and I'm going to try not to give too much background because I'd like to read a lot of poems. But this poem is dated 1178. And let's see, Hildegard was the 10th child, it's believed, born to her parents, and there was a tradition of tithing the 10th child. You give the 10th child to the church. So she was given to the church when she was young. Nobody knows exactly how old, but I would say before adolescence. She was given to the church, and she lived with an anchoress named Jutta, who is now a saint. And they lived in a little teeny house attached to the side of a monastery, a male monastery. So this older woman and little girl lived in this little room connected to the monastery. And that you need to know. She later became famous for her visions, which she either wrote herself or dictated. She was interested in science. She was one of the early women interested in really serious science. And she is the first female composer in the European tradition. And she started a convent. She corresponded with the Pope. And at the end of her life, because she was a very independent woman, she made some bishops angry. And that's a part of this poem. So I think that's all the background you need. And the poem is just called Hildegard of Bingen. Our northern window brought us the office, voices of men sweetened by sacrifice, but even they believed women are less. Our southern window brought us the sky's light, and in moments between work and prayer, calls and laughter from the world we had left. Pledged as my parents' tithe to live thy praise, I praise thee for freeing me as a girl from a wife mother's ordinary chores. I thank thee for the gift of living light that touched flame to a young novice's mind and made me understand what stands in books. I thank thee for the ways my visions show, enkindling fire, creator, sustainer. For the abbey given me and my sisters, Alpha, Omega, soaring harmony. For the music I composed by matin's light, hearing the birds, the roosters, and my quill. I have praised thee every hour in spite of men. Thou art the source of my strength and courage. I put no trust in earthly potentates, those men who are walking westward as I am. As soon as they stop breathing, they are clay, all their important plans quickly forgotten. I praise thee even now, despite the bishops denying us music and sacraments to break my will, assholes. My soul sing praise. Thank you. Thanks. This is a later nun. This was dated, I think she would have said that too. This is dated 1560. It's about a painter whose name was Plautilla Nelli, and she's one of the few female painters recognized in the Italian Renaissance. Okay, Plautilla Nelli. Lord of eclampsia, childbed fever, of birthing children and watching them die. Lord of the escape route to the convent. Lord of the tunic, scapular, and veil. Lord of daily time free from distraction. Lord of grinding, weighing, mixing pigments. Lord of tying and trimming sable hairs. Lord of perspective of the horizon. Lord of proportions. Lord of the thumb's gauge. Lord of copying. Lord of the masters. Lord of the sisters. Lord of the teachers. Lord of the slow unfolding of the gift. Lord of a woman learning how to see. Lord of illuminated manuscripts. Lord of how drawing leads one into prayer. Lord of the deepening of the prayer life. Lord of the inward echoing of thanks. Lord of that chime as constant as heartbeat. Lord of antimony and cochineal, of malachite and verdigris. Lord of lime white and carbon black. Lord of the linen seed, the color wheel. Lord of the billion colors one perceives in just one blink glimpse into the world. Lord of this altarpiece almost finished. Lord of the peasant girl in the background who hums praise as she gathers wild salad. So Holly and I had a conversation and an agreement to make the list of nuns we were dealing with more diverse, and not to only write about Christian Catholic nuns. And this is about a Japanese Buddhist nun who is dated 1865. Her name was Otagaki Ringetsu. And I think the only other thing I need to say about it is that it ends with some imitations of some poems she wrote. Otagaki Ringetsu. Shame daughter of samurai and geisha, but adopted by an honorable family. I was given happiness snatched away. Husbands, children, they vanished like noon dew. The only certainty is impermanence. So I cut my hair, put on the nun's black robe, and became this humble servant, Lotus Moon, who gathers mud to form into vessels, reverently aware of each moment. Between my palms, I need a lump of clay, warming it into flexibility and shaping a welcoming receptacle for water, tea, sake, or emptiness. Each carries, like a scent borne on a breeze, the memory of one single moment my poem catches inscribed under the glaze. In whose dream are you dancing, butterfly? White cherry petals flutter down like snow. Small asymmetrical cups carry my fingerprints through the kiln's inferno into usefulness. They fit each holder's hand, fill it with grace, and gift each holder's heart. The moon loves me. Last night it followed me to my bedroom. On teapots, sake sets, pounding my robe in the spring deep stream, I pause, breathe birdsong. As I walk home through twilight mist, wild geese fly where I cannot see, voices trailing. Let's see. I had a Guggenheim and used it to go to Brazil, and was following the trail of a group of candomblé, sort of nuns, who belonged to what's called the Sisterhood of the Good Death, that was founded in 1850. This is a sisterhood of women who cannot join the sisterhood until they're older than 50, I think. And it was founded, Brazil was still in the throes of slavery, and these sisters bonded together to free people. They worked to raise money to buy people and set them free. And the speaker of this poem is a sister named Hilaria Batista de Almeida. And again, it's dated 1850, and I think the only other thing you need to know is that they're called the Sisterhood of the Good Death, and they're devoted to the Virgin Mary, whose death they believe is the one perfect death. So that is a part of this poem. Tomorrow, after we've led the procession following Our Lady of the Good Death back to our chapel, 200 sisters in our white eyelet head wraps and dresses, and the company of the ancestors, will dance a glory samba with our neighbors like us redeemed and those we work to free. We'll dance as if we don't know aches and pains to celebrate the best death of all time. No death is easy, but some deaths are good. The free die good deaths. The people we free will be put down with honor and music. The best death was the one Our Lady died, passing directly from breath to glory. Glory is ours, too, just one death from now. What dies lives on, no longer slave, but free. The same essence wearing another face, like an Orisha changed into a saint. Tomorrow is Our Lady's Assumption Day. Today we sit in our rooms to prepare, searching the dark silence to find glory. My still hands thick from cutting sugar cane, and there it is, that flood of Thanksgiving. These nimble fingers that can tell from touch the best tobacco leaf, and when to stop rolling a cigar smooth on the table. This year helped free 30 Yoruba slaves. I think I skipped from this project, although I must say I love these sisters. I loved working with them. To move to a different project, I live in Connecticut, and about a year and a half ago, the minister of a congregational church, First Congregational Church of Old Lyme, Connecticut, asked me to write poems about the history of this church, which was founded in 1666. So they're just about to celebrate their 350th anniversary. And so this is the first, it's a little tiny book. It's kind of a chapbook, but the first book I've ever done that was actually commissioned. And the church paid for the publication, so it really is something that belongs to First Congregational Church. And I worked with a local historian, which was a wonderful gift. And I'll read a few of these poems. This is, the book is called The Meeting House, and this is the title poem. It takes place in 1666. These are sounds the landscape has never heard, a strange human language, axes and saws, iron hammers pounding home iron nails, the tromp of boots, the cough of musket fire. Sighing, the old-growth trees crash to the ground, opening a blue vista. Distant sails scud on the wind, silent as butterflies. Englishmen are building a meeting house, a container for worship, a refuge from the new world of heathen savages. Called by the Sabbath drummer at the door, men in black breeches, fitted coats, white stockings and white collars, and women in long, sad-colored dresses and bonnets arrive by horseback or on foot. Armed guards nod welcome. Through the greased paper windows comes light never before caught in plank walls. They sit divided by the center aisle. The left side, men, the right, women and girls, boys in the back with the servants and slaves. In the church history, there is marriage recorded. This is called slave marriage, and the notation in the church history is Oxford, Negro man, and Temperance Mulatto Girl, married by Reverend Moses Noyes, January 26, 1726. I do not take this woman to be my wife, to have and to hold, but I do accept with gratitude this gift of a helpmeet, bedmate, and sharer of secret despair. How should I call an owned woman my wife, knowing my children born to her are his? In sickness and health, richer or poorer, when he whistles, she must run like a dog. But I will take her to the airless room in the attic where I sleep, and our breath will whiten the air over my palate until we jump to work in the pre-dawn. I will hold her warm sobbing in my arms, touch her with tenderness work makes wooden. I will hear Africa's drums in her heart, and with her build an African future. Loneliness is an anvil in the chest, adding to the tonnage of helplessness. But the lone cat in a family household discovers it is a cat when a new cat comes. So I say, yes, let him make you my wife. No longer alone, I shall be a we. Shoulder to shoulder, we shall face down fate, blessed and cursed by the trickster ancestors. Thank you. Thank you. I think I'll just read a couple more from this book. One of the first ministers of this church, Stephen Johnson, was locally famous as a patriot. He wrote and published letters urging the colonists to stand up and rebel against the king. He wrote them and published them under a pseudonym, and so they're quotes from one of his letters in this poem. It's called Patriot Preacher. Josiah taps out his pipe, picks up the paper, and parses some passages out for Abigail. Reverend Johnson stuck his foot in it this time. On the front page of the New London Gazette, he writes of the terrible consequences resulting from enslaving a free people. Abigail nods, knitting needles clicking as she shifts from side to side on her wooden chair. She wishes she'd thought to bring her cushion from the parlor. Josiah's face is red. That vein has emerged in his forehead. Their girl enters, silently serves cider, invisible in the glare of the news. Hearing them speak Reverend Johnson's name, the girl recalls her recent baptism, his voice pronouncing strong incantations, his hand pressing blessings on her wet hair. The calamities which impend over us, Josiah goes on, which we now deplore, threaten no less than slavery and ruin to this great people on this continent. This dreadful alternative, slavery or independency. I like that bit about taxing us for the light of the sun and the air we breathe, Josiah says. Rising, he leaves the room. Abigail sets aside needles and yarn and picks up the Gazette. One of the ads offers for sale a likely Negro boy, about 13, has been in the country about 12 months, speaks pretty good English. She folds the paper. They could use a boy. The girl's no good at lifting heavy things. I'll just read this last. It's on April 10th, 1776. George Washington and the Continental Army spent the night in Lyme, Connecticut. It's Lyme's major claim to fame. So this is called the Continental Army. As I lifted the kettle from the hob, I heard the sound of drums from far away. I paused a moment. Then that hot water got heavy. But I listened while I worked, a steady rhythm, now and then a fife. I washed, wiped, and put the dishes away, then dried my hands and hung up the dish rag. Now I heard hoofbeats and many men's boots. I took my shawl and stepped into the dusk. Out front, a white man with golden shoulders and a sandy pigtail sat a gray horse as if they were one being longing to prance. Most of the town was lined along the street, clapping and cheering. A white army marched, black-booted feet in perfect unison, toward the church, in identical cocked hats, white sashes, blue coats with silver buttons, fawn waistcoats and breeches, and knee-high boots. They carried muskets fitted with bayonets. Never had I seen such terrible power. They marched to the cadence the drummer set, left, right, left, right, left, right, for many ranks. Some of us gathered behind McCurdy's house, whispering what we had heard and understood of all this commotion. Zacchaeus swore he saw some brothers among the soldiers. The drummer they marched to brought up the rear. We stood silenced when we saw his dark face. Move on to something else. Yes. There was a village founded in Manhattan in 1825 when a white farmer, for some unknown reason, decided to sell some of his property to African American people who were free already. Apparently, it was possible to vote if you owned property. So it's not clear whether he did this for political reasons or whether he's just broke and needed the money. But in any case, this village was founded in 1825, and people cleared land or further cleared land, planted orchards, built houses, had businesses. There were a couple of churches there. There was a school. And in the 1840s, during the Great Potato Famine in Ireland, there were Irish immigrants who joined these people in this village, which is called Seneca Village. So it was an peacefully integrated village for about 15 years. And then in 1857, the city of New York decided that they needed a park. And they used the law of eminent domain to force the Seneca Village people to sell their property and leave. So now there's a little plaque at, I think it's 86th Street and Central Park West, identifying this as the location of Seneca Village. And but I followed the history of the village and used names from the census records to create characters to use as sort of puppets to tell the history of the village. Trying to abbreviate this. Maybe I'll just read 4 poems from this. The speaker of this poem is a woman named Sarah Matilda White, who became one of my favorite puppets. I wound up writing a lot of poems in her voice. I made her the hairdresser, and I think she's a gossip. So she's the person who knows what's happening. And again, the village was founded in 1825. In 1831, Nat Turner's rebellion happened in Virginia, and I'm imagining that this news would have arrived at Sarah Matilda White's beauty shop. So that's what this is about. It's called Skyland. Elizabeth, that bump looks good on you. Don't blush, honey. Love is a joy to share. Now, what are we doing today with that mop of hair? Sit on down, I'll fetch warm water and shampoo. This week, shagbark nut oil with peppermint. Mortar and pestle and I are on a quest to find which combinations work the best, kettle by kettle of crushed oil and scent. You heard about Jane Bolden? Such a shame. Lean back. But she was lustful to the end. Acted like every man was her boyfriend. Sometimes I was tempted to call her out of her name. Pat dry while I heat the oil. You heard about that Nat Turner that led slaves to rebel? For 2 days, whites in Virginia lived in hell on earth like us, I hear. Yes, mad, no doubt, thinking justice means turning the tables around, showing the cruel no mercy. That makes sense by the natural logic of experience, but it ain't the teaching my mama passed down. All right, Elizabeth, cornrows again? You're too tender-headed, girl. Try not to flinch. 55 they killed, for which hundreds were lynched. Yes, he was a hero, a man among men. He was hanged, flayed, and quartered. They cut off his head. Maybe God spoke. Maybe madness played a part. But I believe vengeance harms the avenging heart. Was he right or wrong? Ask the future. Ask the dead. All done. Tell Obadiah to watch his back. Thanks. Have a nice day. Yes, that's on my list of things to ask when I'm called to my rest in that skyland where everybody's black. Let me see, page. This is Sarah Matilda White again in the beauty shop again, talking to Elizabeth again. Elizabeth is a bookish person in the village. This is called the Park Theater, and it's a piece of history. You heard what happened to Elizabeth and Obadiah a few nights ago? You know how crazy Elizabeth is for books. Yes, I love it too when she reads to the Ladies' Aid from her pages missing hand-me-down library. How she'll close her eyes and repeat some plummy passage, sighing with such pleasure you want to cry. Hold your ear down. Well, they went to Richard III at the Park Theater, an anniversary treat. Their love seemed sweeter since they lost the child. She said it hurt to see him humble himself at the ticket window, offering a week's pay to be seated in the highest balcony reserved for elite colored folk and whores. Frankly, I'd rather live without Shakespeare than walk on the seamy side of the street. But Obadiah will do anything she asks, and she loves herself some Shakespeare. Said she was whirled into a spell when the curtain rose and Junius Booth spoke words she recognized in an accented voice she strained to hear. She was so entranced by the tiny, distant drama that when one of the pleasure purveyors gave a cry of release, Elizabeth woke up with a start. She looked around the industrious balcony and burst out sobbing. Obadiah took her home to the tenderness of wordless poetry, she called it. Sweeter than Shakespeare, she said. I just read one more from this. This is a continuation. That happened in 1833. That was Junius Booth, who was the brother of John Wilkes. And this happened a year later. It's called the Shakespeare Riot. It's Sarah Matilda White again. I said I liked her best. The Amistad Africans, yes, they are heroes all. Pray God they'll win their lawsuit, be sent home, and never have to see white folks again. Living with white folks is like being married to an unpredictable, violent man who explodes if an eggshell crunches under your feet. You heard about the anti-Shakespeare riot at the African Grove Theater's Richard III. Did you know Elizabeth and Obadiah were there? They'd hired James Hewlett, the famous black tragedian, to head an all-black cast. Elizabeth shouldn't have gone so far, she was so big, but she said she had to see how the play ends. Imagine a theater where respectable colored families can float on the blue cloud thrill of poetry, she said. She was holding the baby. I was braiding her hair. She talked about Richard, twisted, unloved, the bitter villainy behind his charm, how he connived his way up to the throne. When whites broke in, "No Shakespeare for naggers," a melee in defense of poetry followed. They beat James Hewlett to a pulp. Elizabeth blackened one white man's eye before Obadiah wrestled her away to the express four-horse streetcar uptown. I'm needing to stop. So I'll just read one final poem. It's a little bit longer than these. It's something that happened in about 2002. And it's kind of a long poem. Can you wait 10 minutes? I think it'll probably take 10 minutes to read. It's called Faster Than Light. I didn't want to pay to park my car, so I took a taxi to the train station. New London is an hour's drive away, but it was the best solution I could find. After 10 miles or so of idle chat in which my occupation was confessed, the driver said he was a physicist. As a hobby, he said, driving was his trade. Still struggling to connect my seat belt clasp, I asked his opinion of an article I'd skimmed last weekend in the New York Times about a man who researches time travel. He made that Parisian cabbies make in early August when Americans try to parley avec them at rush hour. He gave me a long over-the-shoulder glare, squeezed the steering wheel, and hit the gas. He said, "He's wrong. The one thing that would work is to fly faster than the speed of light through a wormhole. The gravitational field is full of holes. You only have to find one and be pulled by metagravitational force. For energy, you could use compressed song." Or words to that effect. My memory isn't what it was 10 minutes ago. He drove with 10 white knuckles on the wheel, his pinched blue right eye looking back at me as we took the curves on 2 screaming tires. Faster than light travel, that's the secret. The government's been onto this for years. There are other planets waiting to be explored. This one's almost used up. It's time to move. We won't take people who don't measure up, our intellectual inferiors. Let them inherit the earth. We'll take the skies. I still couldn't figure out the seatbelt catch. The poor and ignorant population grows so quickly. What? Deny the right to life? There's a fucking Holocaust of the unborn. But some races and cultures lack the gift of scientific knowledge. It's the dross of their stupidity which weighs us down and holds us back. Faster than light travel, the only way. We hurtled down the turnpike, passing trucks faster than light, and cars full of people driving hell-bent to get to work on time. Faster than light travel, that's the ticket. Finally, we pulled up at the train station. I'd given up on fastening my seatbelt. Stupid contraption, trusting to the universe to grant me more good luck. I scrambled out. We wished each other well. My tip was generous, if I do say so myself. Faster than light, he yelled, late for his next pickup, zooming off, talking to his phone. My cup brimmed over with Psalm 23. Buoyancy's sometimes stronger than gravity. Bless you. I wheeled my luggage down the crowded train, then found a seat and opened my magazine. Some influence is affecting a space probe, I read, which baffles scientists. It will rewrite the laws of physics and astronomy when scientists understand and name that force. The plan was for Pioneer 10 to arrive some 1,000,000 years from now at some far place. In case of alien contact, there's a plaque of a human couple and a celestial map showing Earth with a spear held to her head. 30 years beyond its launch, it's past Pluto, the farthest planet orbiting our sun, in empty space 7 billion miles from Earth. The article said current theories can't explain what's causing the decrease in Pioneer's speed. It's almost imperceptible, a mere 6 miles per hour per century. But Pioneer 10 is being pulled back to the sun. I closed my eyes. Several million years from now, as if a species on the brink of extinguishing itself said to a future species, "Remember me, the species which perfected genocide? Will science ever discover humility?" I forgot to say in the introduction that there are 3 voices, mine, the taxi driver, and the muse. So, okay. Will science ever discover humility? Right, fool. You want to say en garde to science? Why stop there? Why don't you attack knowledge while you're at it? And how about progress? Ain't that a bit ambitious, Miss William Blake? What was that voice? Listen, Marilyn, listen, as saints once listened, and of course the mad. I looked around. The other passengers were busy with laptops, breakfasts, books. And where does it get off, accusing me? Ambition? Why, I've surpassed every fantasy I had. Would I presume to badmouth our attempt to cheat death? My poems, a handful of dust trying to get back to supernova, like every longing, everything alive. But ambition wants the immortality of a members-only country club Valhalla, an eternal summit meeting of great names. Millions of light years into the future, that immortality ambition breeds with serendipity. What will it mean? Our poetry, our books, our language, dust of words never again to be spoken. I wonder what will last millions of years. A stone? A nuclear waste storage site? Will Homo sapiens evolve or die? Will wiser beings populate our Earth? We are dying faster than the speed of light, our fame forgettable. Will good deeds too vanish like molecules of exhaled breath to be recycled by the universe? Girl, get on back to the raft. When you try to think, the breeze between your ears nearly blows me away. My muse again. So much for my magazine. I closed its pages and began to drift. As if you wasn't drifting all along. If you had the good sense God promised the carrot, you'd know that what lasts is the hush of space, the hiss of orbit, and the hum of stars. If you could launch a space probe, I wondered, would you take up my name engraved in gold, my puny thoughts, my hopes for the future? And if I knew I'd be anonymous, would I publish? Would I write poems at all? During the countdown of the anonymous, you'd be trying to scratch your initials on the hull. Well, muse of disposable poetry, at least I'm not producing toxic waste. But poets who want immortality, poets who are ambitious, is it wrong to want life after our deaths for our songs? Leave immortality to cancer cells. They don't know when to stop. Just when they reach the point of no return, the body dies and the cancer is returned to Genesis. Genes are programmed to reproduce and die, and poetry to stick on a synapse, lucky to be a line remembered wrong. Your work projected into the future is pulled back to earth by dark energy, the glue which binds the cosmos together. From Stamford, I no longer traveled alone. My seatmate fast-talked into his cell phone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.